Alright, what's up guys? We're here with a new video idea. This new video idea being clashes. Clashes were really confusing to a lot of people, to even me, honestly, because I seriously was like very confused learning all these clashes. But before anything, let's just hop straight into it. And just to confirm, I'm gonna try and do my best to just call them like Imp Packs because that's what they're called on the game. But if I call them clashes, then bear with me because that's what I mostly know them by, and that's what a lot of people know them by too. And I'm also gonna try and tell y'all, try and keep it like even, trying to tell like which buttons are for Xbox, which buttons are for PS5. I'll do my best on that, and classic and standard. But anyways, let's hop straight into it. Now, the first one we're going to talk about is speed impacts. Speed impacts or dash impacts. Speed impacts happen whenever you and your opponent drag and dash towards each other. So that's kind of like the whole speed dash that y'all do towards each other. Now, the moment that this happens, you and your opponent will begin the clash. Once the clash begins, a purple sphere is going to appear on the screen. And on the outer layer of that, there is going to be a white ring that appears out of that one. Now, there's two stages that happen with the speed impact clash. What's going to happen is the white ring is going to shrink down towards the middle. Now, your job with that is to press square or X if you're playing on Xbox, right when the ring is inside the purple sphere. The closer you are to the middle of the sphere, the higher your chances of winning the clash. Now, be careful because this could also mean that if you could do it too close or too late, the screen will crack and you'll lose the clash. What's going to happen is then after you complete the first stage, the second stage is going to prompt a button on your screen. Now this is where it's kind of different for people. Obviously for Xbox and PS5, it's square and X. Standard, it's just mashing the square button or the X button. If you're on classic, you better pray that your joystick doesn't break because you're going to have to mash that in a circle as fast as you can. This is where for me personally, I take the standard controls because I like just mashing better than I do spinning the joystick, but it's everyone's preference, so you do what you think is best for you. All right, next one, power impact or power clashes. This clash can happen whenever you and your opponent both grab each other.
Pause.
So if you and your opponent initiate a grab at the exact same time, then you'll initiate the clash. Now, how this one works is a bar is going to appear. Your job is to make sure that you fill up that bar as much as possible without touching this yellow line. Now, be careful because if you hold the square button too long, it'll bounce back and you'll probably like end up losing the clash because you're lower. Now, I'm going to explain to you the best way that I do this to myself because this one to me is the most confusing. Now, from what I do, I kind of hold the button as long as possible until I get just like a meter below the yellow. Then what I do is I start mashing square to kind of hold it there, basically make sure that I win the clash. Now, this is everyone's preference. You can do it to where you just time it yourself all in one go. You can do this to where you just mash it like me, but I find it that this way is best for me, personally. But everyone, you can kind of mess around and do this your own way. All right, now the next one, crash impacts. Now, this one is actually pretty confusing too, but I'm going to try and explain it to you best here. Okay, so how this one works is basically, if you're a God of War fan or, you know, a quick time event fan, you'll kind of understand what this is. However, this one's a bit more confusing than like regular QuickTime events. The crash impact happens when you and your opponent dash into each other. And what I mean by that is when you and your opponent click X and at the exact same time while you're close to each other, and then it'll initiate the clash. Now, what's going to happen is buttons are going to appear from your controller. It's going to tell you from either Xbox or PS5, whichever one. The confusing part is sometimes I hear people say that you have to click the button as fast as possible. And I honestly, from what I see, if I'm wrong, then let me know down below. You shouldn't mash it as fast as you see the button. You shouldn't press it immediately. What's going to happen is there's going to be like a glow around the button. The moment that light appears, that's when you press the button. And that's basically going to happen 3 times. Now, your job is to win these clashes. You'll have 3 clashes that happen, but your goal is to win at least 2 of them. So if you win the first 2 and your opponent only wins the last one, you'll win the clash. If you win the first one, then your opponent wins the next one. Then it comes down to the third one with you or your opponent, who's going to grab that one. If you win, then you'll win the entire clash. But be careful because that means that your opponent can also win the last clash and can beat you. And now, the last one, everybody's mostly favorite because first of all, it's really cool. And second of all, it is probably the easiest one out of all of these. How beam clashes work is very simple. This can happen when you and your opponent both fire a beam at each other. This can include an ultimate beam or a super beam, either one. As from what you see in the tutorial, Gohan's super Kamehameha and Piccolo's light grenade. Basically, what's happens is when you and your opponent both fire the beam, the clash will begin. From what I've heard, there are two ways that people like to do this one. The first one, which is the main one and that I personally choose, is wait for this bar to fill all the way up. Once it fills all the way up, try and get it to the most as possible before you hit the wall. Then you click whichever button prompt it says for you. Once that happens, is the bar is going to fill all the way up, and the moment that happens, you need to click the button and it'll count as one of your charges, basically. And that's going to keep happening from until the clash ends, and then you'll see who wins. Now, the second way that I've heard this works is that people say they just mash it as fast as possible the moment it appears. Or whichever button it says on the prompt, you just mash that as fast as possible, and I've seen people say that they've won clashes like that too. Now, my personal one is just wait for the bar to fill up and then click it when it's ready. That's how I personally do it. Now, the last thing that I want to explain is the boost. How the boost works, this applies for every single clash all the same. The boost works is which button ever corresponds to your boost, which can be R2 or L2 or whichever your Xbox ones are. I'm sorry, I don't know the Xbox back buttons. But how it works is you'll get 3 charges in total. What happens is each charge adds like an extra power to your clashes, which can help you give you more of a chance to win. And you get a total of 3, minimum being 1, maximum being 3. But be careful, because this can also be very risky. If you say let's say you have 2 bars of key, or just 1 bar of key, or even no key. If you mash the boost button with no key at all, then you're pretty much locked out into key sickness, which I call it key sickness, or just whatever it's called in the game. And you won't be able to do anything while you're in this state, nothing at all. So if you have 2 bars and you mash it 3 times, then you'll lose a bar and you'll have 1 bar of key sickness. If you have 0 bars and you do it 3 times, you'll have 3 bars of key sickness. It's basically like that with all of them, if you get it. Alright, well, that was the video. I just wanted to give a quick explanation on how this works, because I know I was very confused when I was doing this, and I just want to see if I can help others out. Alright, thank you for watching the video. Peace.